What is the first mob that comes into your mind when you think of Minecraft? For many of you, is the iconic creeper, Steve. For some, it could be the zombie, Enderman, or the Ender Dragon. It could even be the newly added Warden. These are mobs that can be the most recognizable because of how much of a role they play in this game, and would be hard to imagine what it would be like if they weren't in the game at all. Well, for every recognizable and known mob in the game, there is also an unknown and forgotten mob that at one point could have had a place in the game world. I'm sure you know about the zombie piglin that roam the nether, right? But have you heard about the pigman bodyguard? Or the agent? Well, let me introduce you to Minecraft's forgotten mobs. First off, I'm not going to include the mobs that were cut from the mob vote like the vulture, meerkat, or the moobloom, because I feel like those mobs have already been covered pretty extensively around YouTube. But who knows, maybe I will make a video about them in the future. I'm going to start this list off with a few of the more recognizable forgotten mobs, and then delve deep into the ones that very few people have even heard about. Let's get into it. Starting off with the one which is without a doubt the most known unused mob in Minecraft, the zombie horse. This mob was implemented on Java 1.6.1 July 1st, 2013 and is surprisingly the only mob on this list that was, or in this case, is on both the Java and Bedrock versions. This mob does not spawn naturally but can be spawned by the player using an egg. This mob acts the same way as the normal horse but has some nice advantages over its counterparts, like slowly regenerating their health. Because this is an undead mob, it interestingly takes damage by a potion of healing and can be healed by a potion of harming. It's unfortunate that this horse cannot be found in survival, but has been in the game since 2013, as if Mojang forgot this one even existed. Up next is a killer bunny exclusive to Java Edition, being in the game since version 1.8. For a short while in this version, killer bunnies could be found around the world naturally. When a rabbit spawned in your world, it had a 1 in 2,500 chance at being a hostile, and would spawn even if you had peaceful mode turned on. This rabbit came to be as an Easter egg from a well-known scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Shortly after being introduced, it could no longer spawn without commands because the joke had gotten tiring, and as Jeb put it, they're basically a random death event. Another mob that is exclusive to the Java edition is the Giant, which was added in the game all the way back in InDev 0.31. Giants are mostly the same model as the zombie, but are expanded 6 times the size of them. They are not categorized as undead and cannot burn in the sun. They also don't have AI, resulting in them always looking south when spawned with commands, and can only be changed directionally using commands. Interestingly though, they had a huge update to them in Snapshot 18W50A, with new features such as them now having a zombie AI, making them able to move and burn in the sun, move twice as fast as normal zombies, and had a baby as well as chicken jockey variant to them. However, for some reason in Snapshot 19W03A, all the massive improvements to the Giant were reverted back to the previous versions, and thus, the progress was gone. This next one can only be found by commands and spawn eggs on Education Edition and technically on Bedrock by commands, that being the Agent. This mob allows players to code actions on the golem, prompting the golem to perform feats such as moving, mining, building, and even collecting materials around it. Now, I said technically it is found in Bedrock because though you can spawn it using commands, it will be invisible and cannot be used for anything, making it pretty useless. The Human is our next mob. The character of Steve, which has been the default player model for a long time now, actually used to be a mob that would run ballistically around the Minecraft world as the first mob to be introduced in the game. They were added in pre-classic version RD 132328 and could be spawned by pressing G. They were removed in a very early version of a survival test. Notch began removing the mob ID in the beta version, and in the changelog, Notch joked that he had removed Herobrine, a Minecraft urban legend, as a result. The Illusioner, not to be confused with the cut mob vote Isolager, is an unused variant of the Illager that would cast spells and use a bow. This mob can only be seen using commands in Java. This hostile target is able to fire an arrow every second, making it more dangerous than the skeleton. The Illusioner always tries to have a sizable distance between their opponent while also being able to duplicate itself and turn invisible. It can even cast a blindness effect on the player for 20 seconds. Since being added to the files in 1.12, it has been getting slight modifications on the way it acts and its appearance, with the latest version being 1.19. This next one is actually 4 mobs, and I'm including all of these in one entry because they are very similar to each other, appearing only for a brief time back in InDev 0.31, that being the names of Steve, Rana, Black Steve, and Beast Boy. These mobs were passive, and since they had no animation, would disappear and drop a small variety of items when killed. The intentions of this mob being in the game for a short while was only for testing purposes, and will not make another appearance after this. The pigmen arguably have the best story out of all of these mobs so far. The concept came to be by a Minecraft fan named McLee who gave their suggestion to the developers back in 2010. In 2011, Notch had mentioned that he was thinking of adding the pigmen as villagers, but then a different villager mob was chosen over it. A well-known Mojang employee, Dinnerbone, had mentioned that in August 2012, they were working on the mob as a hireable bodyguard for the player, or the pigmen bodyguard. It would have no clothes on and you would have been able to give it weapons and armor, but unfortunately would be shelved just a month later. However, the idea of the pigmen will be used in a different way as inhabitants of the Nether called zombie pigmen, which was later replaced with zombie piglins in the Nether update. In 2009, Notch had mentioned that survival mode should have a goal that the player could work towards. Fast forward a year to 2010 and he mentions that dragon lairs may be a future addition. He also mentions dragons briefly a few months later at Minecon, but after that, it was no longer mentioned until another year later. He reveals some pictures of a mysterious pure white entity in the sky. He later goes on to mention that there will be different types of dragons, the Ender Dragon, possibly larger than the ones in the overworld, which would be red. This is the reveal of the Red Dragon. This would be the last mention of other dragons in the game though, as shortly thereafter 1.0.0 was released that added the Ender Dragon as Minecraft's first boss, and a well-known part of the game, there was no mention of the Red Dragon again. And that wraps up this video. In the description there will be posted commands of the mobs that could be summoned in the game. Though the mobs on this list are not currently in the game, at least not completely, there is hope that at least a few of these will finally be put into the game in the future, or at least some sort of mob like it, such as the pigmen, which later was changed to become a huge part of the Nether. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If there is anything that you think I missed that should be covered, feel free to let me know in the comments below. A subscribe and a like is always appreciated. With that said, I hope you learned something new today, and have a good one.